Welcome to the Criminologist Podcast. Our goal here is to educate and enlighten our listeners, focusing on the latest and greatest evidence-based interventions to help individuals desist from a life of crime and delinquency. And not only those factors which drive folks into crime, we also look at the reasons why people exit a life of crime. Also, we attempt to paint an accurate picture of that journey from the perspective of the justice-involved individual. Too often, our perceptions of those involved in the system are tainted by media-driven caricatures created to sell newspapers or movie tickets. This adds little to a healthy dialogue as to how to best address criminality. This podcast will avoid stereotypes and biases. We will endeavor to accomplish the first two goals in a way that keep you, the listener, interested and even entertained. And now, the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Thank you. Hello, and welcome to episode 39 of the Criminologist Podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. Very excited to be sharing my interview with you all that I recently had with DJ Vodicka and Lanny Tron. DJ is a former correctional officer with the California Department of Corrections. Lanny Tron is his attorney who joined him in his whistleblowing efforts against what he and they saw going on with the California Department of Corrections. I'm going to let them both tell you all about this fascinating story. You're really in for a treat here as I bring you my interview with DJ Vodicka, author of the book, The Green Wall, a prison guard's struggle to expose the code of silence in the largest prison system in the United States. So here we go. I will see you all on the other side. Well, hello and welcome to my interview with DJ Vodicka. We're also joined today by his attorney, Lanny Tron. DJ, let's just start out. You have a fascinating story to tell, and I won't do it justice even trying to, frame it up a little bit. So you're here to talk about your book, The Green Wall. Let's just back up a little bit, though. You started your career in corrections, California Department of Corrections, back in 1987, correct?
Actually, I started my career in 1988, Joe.
Okay. And then sort of kick off how your journey started coming into the Department of Corrections, and then we'll go through some of your fascinating stories along the way, leading up to what prompted you to write your book. So just kind of kick off with those early years, what that was like, what you experienced.
Yeah, Joe, I joined the Department of Corrections in March of 1988 after I spent 4 years in the United States Army at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I came home to be with my parents. And my father, he said, the only thing hiring right now, son, is the California Department of Corrections, because I wanted to get in some type of law enforcement when I came home. So I entered the Department of Corrections in March of 1988. I did a 6-week academy there in Sacramento. And then my first assignment was at the famous Corcoran State Prison in the Central Valley, with houses all the shoe inmates and the heavy gang members and the big notarized inmates like Charles Manson, Sirhan, all the big powerful people. I ended up staying there for about 4 years. And in 1992, I transferred to another prison, opened up a prison called Calipatria State Prison in the Central, down there in Palm Springs, California. And I stayed down there for about 2 years, and then shortly after that, I transferred to the notorious Pelican Bay State Prison. I was in Pelican Bay Prison from 1994 to 1996, and then where I became the ISU. I was an evidence officer. I collected all the evidence in the crime scenes at Pelican Bay. Who I worked with, my supervisor at the time was Joe Reynoso, who I met at Corcoran State Prison when I first went to Corcoran. So shortly after that, in 1996, I transferred again. I went to another prison called Salinas Valley State Prison in Monterey, California. I went down there in 1996, and I opened up the ISU unit down there. The warden wanted me to open up that unit to help set it up and get it running. So I ended up staying at that prison for about 5 years until I blew the whistle on a group of road guards who called themselves the Green Wall. And that all started in 1998. when a Thanksgiving riot happened on one of the yards down there where Southern Hispanic inmates attacked staff, and staff did wrongdoing against these inmates who they formed a gang called the Green Wall, a real cliquish type of gang that did criminal activity against inmates inside the institution.
So our listeners at home can't see this, obviously. We are doing this over software where I can actually see DJ, and before we hit the record button, we made a connection because he's wearing his Minnesota Vikings sweatshirt. And another similarity, just now, DJ, as you were talking, and I got the date wrong, thinking you started your career in 1987, and you corrected me with 1988. I started my career with the Florida Department of Corrections in March of 1988. So
nice.
Another connection piece there. Yeah. So let me, again, because I don't want to shortchange your amazing career, let's back up a little bit before we get to the Thanksgiving Day riot and what sort of started that domino effect of your journey. I know for a little bit, and you were kind enough to send me a copy of your book. Let's talk about Chapter 3, Gangland. What was that like, not just working with those California prison gangs, but as some folks may or may not know, the trick with correctional officers, I shouldn't say it's a trick, is garnering that respect, because the layperson might not know this. You're not armed in the prison, and it really is much more of a challenge. Again, that respect angle. You want to maybe expand on that a little bit, DJ, on how you handled that challenge of working with those high risk gang members and how that respect balancing act took place.
Yeah, Joe, when I worked with nothing but level 4 inmate prisoners, which is the highest inmate levels besides death row. And there's 4 levels in the California Department of Corrections: level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Where 4 is the high rate of the inmates that are locked up either doing life or life without. And heavy gang members, and when I say heavy gang members, I had that respect from them. I treated them with respect, and you get that respect back. The minute you start talking down to these guys in the environment that I worked at, you're basically had a hit on you. Basically, these guys, they know they think you're above the law, and you just, you think just because you wear a badge on your chest that you can do whatever you want. And these guys see it. These guys are OGs. They're old gangsters. They've done time, man. These guys aren't like, youngsters coming in, and my whole career that I was in, as long as it lasted, I was only assaulted one time by an inmate. I was gassed. I was throwing urine and feces on me through a cell door, but that inmate didn't have it all there. His marbles, his elevator didn't go up to the top floor. But other than that, my whole career, I showed him respect, and I got that respect back, and that's what it's about. Especially living in that environment in a prison. I mean, you got to understand, you're going through a gate that you might not come home. There's that chance you might not come home, and if you show that respect, you're gonna get that respect back.
You rattled off some of the other more notorious inmates that were housed when you were working. And I know, again, from glancing at your book, I remember when his book came out, Monster. Do you want to maybe remind our listeners or inform our listeners about that individual that you, again, cross paths with?
Are you talking about Monster Cody? He's a heavy shot. He was a shot caller, the kingpin of the Crips, very well respected. When he walked the yard at Corcoran, he was walking the yard at Corcoran, and he had a surrounding of other inmates that would protect him. It's almost like the general walking around the yard, and we all knew who he was, and our superiors, our lieutenants and sergeants, hey, look, show him respect, they'll give respect back. And that man gave us respect. I mean, if something were happening on the yard with his own people, they would take care of their own people. I mean, unless they couldn't handle their own people, then they would come over and talk to us and let us know, hey, this individual's not listening to us, and you guys do what you got to do to lock him up or whatever, because he can't be on the yard another day. And most of the gangs that I work with in the prison system, that's the kind of protocol they had. They took care of their own inside. If they couldn't take care of their own inside, then they left that to us to clean up their mess.
So when you were at, I believe it was Pelican Bay, you became part of the ISU, or Investigative Services Unit. What stands out for you as to that stage of your career?
When like I said, I was ISU officer, evidence officer. I did so many crime scenes. I did so many crime scenes of the documented gang members in the Pelican Bay Shoe. And I can remember one what really standed out. His name was Art Rufo. He was an Aryan Brotherhood member, fully loaded, been down a long time. And I remember going down to responding down to his unit, that possible a homicide down in his cell. And when we got there, they had the one inmate that was housed with them. He was already out of the cell, and inmate Rufo was laid down on the floor. And, he was actually dead. His cell, he strangled him to death in the cell. And how he did it, I can describe how he did it. When they did push-ups and they're worked out, the inmate would get on top of Rufo's body and lay his body over the top of it, and that's how they would do pushes, or they call them burpees. That weight on the top of the back, and that's how they worked out and got strong. Well, what this inmate did, when Rufo was, almost couldn't exert anymore, the inmate went around, grabbed him behind the throat and crushed his larynx and held on to him and choked him out and killed him in the cell. But in order for that to happen, Joe, in the California system, that inmate who choked him out had to have a green light to take him out. And usually the counsel from the area brother said, "Hey, you need to take Art Rufo out. He's no good. He's been disrespecting a lot of people." So that's what happened, and that was a pretty one of my memories that stood out, and several others on the yards. I've seen a lot of riots. I've seen a lot of gang riots. Matter of fact, you might go to the YouTube video. They had the famous Pelican Bay riot. It's on there. I was the evidence officer at that riot. I cleaned up that whole crime scene. I did that whole crime scene. It took a long time, but I was actually there in that riot.
Yeah, I'll look for that YouTube link, and then I can leave that in the show notes of this episode. So if our listeners want to check that out, they can do so. So I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but then you mentioned the Thanksgiving Day riot, and then that's what sort of started this domino effect of what prompted you to write the book. And I don't know, Lanny, if maybe you want to jump in, because your paths eventually crossed with DJ. Do you want to maybe talk about, again, the impetus behind the book? And you mentioned the green wall earlier. Maybe kind of expand on that a bit.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joe. Good to hear your voice again, DJ. It's an interesting client, and I just wanted to give you a little background about DJ. As he said, he grew up in Minnesota. He spent his time in the Army. His father was in the Air Force, and they happened to live out here in California in a small town, Camarillo. And DJ went off and did his thing. He and I didn't know each other until one day I get a call saying that there's a client interested in visiting with us. He's a correctional officer, and he's got some issues because he's a whistleblower. And our firm does employment law. And DJ was from this area, Camarillo. Our practice is in Camarillo, so we sat down and met. And the thing about DJ is that he's not a meek, mild. He's a big man. He's 6'7", 6'8", 300 pounds. As we went along through this journey in our lives together, we played basketball together. And I'm not a small guy, but DJ would throw me around like a rag doll. So this is not a man that's intimidated by much or scared of much. So to talk about his life in the prison, I really wanted to know, because I really wanted to be able to tell his story to a judge and a jury. And DJ would talk about the training he had, which doesn't seem like much, 6 weeks, but that's what you get. You don't get a weapon. You get a little pepper spray. You're on the yard with 1,000 to 2,000 inmates, most of whom don't have anything to lose because they're in there for life. So if you disrespect them, as DJ said, they're going to punish you. And DJ understood that. And he said, as he told you all already, when he went to the yard, he showed respect to these people as human beings. Sure, they're inmates. Sure, they've done some terrible things. Sure, these are, when you get to Pelican Bay, the worst of the worst. And these are people who lead gangs throughout the nation, not just California, but throughout the nation. So these are pretty scary people. But DJ showed them respect, and he understood that, and he got that respect. And so as time went on, and he worked in the investigative services unit, he would be investigating any crimes. Sometimes crimes by other correctional officers. Well, that didn't sit well with a lot of these correctional officers. So as DJ mentioned, he gets into the prison at Salinas Valley, and Salinas Valley is a new prison. DJ helped open it up, set the policies, practices, procedures. Very, very proud man. DJ, very proud man about doing what he did, and always remembering that at the end of the day, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, did I do right today? Did I do right by the people I work with? Did I do right by the inmates? Did I do right by my community? And so that was important to him. So he gets to Salinas Valley. There's a big riot. He's got to collect evidence. And he does that. But the warden there, and DJ will explain more of this to you, the warden there decided, this prison's out of control. So I'm going to handpick some people to put fear and intimidation in the hearts of inmates, so they know who's in charge. And this is not a, hey, why don't we just sit down and talk things through and get it done? No, this was going to be beating inmates. This is going to be planting evidence. This is going to be doing anything they could to exert their control over the inmates, not through peaceful means, but through forceful means. And that is, if you're not going to play ball with us, we're going to do something to you to extend your time in jail. We're going to do something to you to put you in solitary. We're going to do something to you to put you in segregated housing unit or the SHU. And DJ's watching this happen, and he says, this is not right. This is just not right. And as he'll explain to you, he makes a report, and then his life goes to... his life in the prison becomes literally unbearable. And this is not from fear of the gangs that are there in the prison, not the Crips, the Bloods, the Southern Mexicans. What he's worried about is the other guards. The other guards are going to do something to him. The other guards are going to put him in jeopardy. The other guards are going to, create an incident and then not come to his aid. And so he's got to blow the whistle, and that's what causes him to report the Green Wall, and this is what causes him to have to be transferred in the middle of the night to another prison, and, he thought he could, I can at least breathe now because I'm at a new facility. Nope. Nearly the first minute he walks into a new prison, they're aware of who he is and what he's done, and it all follows him. So this becomes a time when he's got to contact, or we cross paths, and the California Senate and that legislature becomes interested in what he's reporting, and so he goes to the Senate. DJ goes to the Senate hearing, and the Senate hearing room is enormous, 300, 400, 500 seats, never usually filled. This one is full to the rafters. People out in the hallways, closed circuit television, and DJ, out of fear for his life, wears a bulletproof vest because he is really concerned that it's not just the ordinary individual. It's going to be one of these correctional officers who fears the whistle being blown on them. And so he wears a vest, but he stands proud and he tells his story. And Joe, I got to tell you, I sat with him at that table and he had no notes. He had no prepared statement. He just told his story and riveting. It was riveting. And everyone in that room was hushed the whole time. And, I was certainly proud of him, but it was at a point where we realized you can't be out in public anymore. So DJ goes into hiding, and it's never ending. He goes into hiding and then finds out just going into town to buy groceries that people have been asking if they've seen him around the neighborhood and in the area. And so he knows he's got to be ultra concerned about what's happening and be diligent in checking his back. So eventually, this transpires into he files a lawsuit. He gets the Department of Corrections to change their policies. They now have a code of silence training. That happens. DJ, he's still in hiding. He's had to have his son and wife move to other areas and just for their own sake not be with them, because this is not the life he wanted for his son, but he'd rather have his son be alive and live a life than be with not be here. So, Joe, I can't tell you how proud I am of DJ, how much of an honor it has been to represent him. We are still friends. Our families are still close. And that's, I've been fortunate. You don't get a lot of opportunities in life to meet someone you consider a real hero. And this is DJ. He taught a lesson about blowing the whistle. My son actually ran into a weird situation, and he had to blow the whistle about an organization he was with. And he told me, quite frankly, it's because of what DJ did, and doing the right thing mattered the most. So that's our lives. We're still involved. Just talking every day, making sure everything's okay. And you can't. DJ can never take a deep breath and say this is over. Just a month or so ago, a real credible threat to his life from a prison here in California, some correctional officers leaked out that they wanted to do him harm. So,
that was because I wrote the book, Joe, and this, like, prison reforms happening in California is so massive, and Lanny knows, because I wrote the book. I shared everything about the Green Wall.
Yeah, truly inspirational. And I just want to comment as well, when Lanny was talking about the steps that you've had to take. So as a former probation officer in a different iteration of my career, and I can tell you a lot of probation officers, that's their big fear is a threat, or am I being followed home by a client? Because again, working with high risk individuals up to and including gang members, I experienced that. But never that extra level of what you just articulated, Lanny, of, fear of my colleagues and my peers. Yeah. So again, a chilling and inspirational story all in one. So,
well, see, Joe, the real quick, Joe, is anytime there was a threat on me, I'd contact Lanny, and Lanny, he stopped what he was doing in other cases or whatever, because he knows, anything that happened to me, it was a legit where I was in hiding in California. And I came out to go grocery shopping, like Lanny said. some of the people. I was in a small town in Northern California. I was actually off the grid. I'm talking off the grid, 20 miles off the grid through 2 lock gates. Nobody knew where I was. When I went to town, people were asking questions. Hey, have you seen this big guy, big bald-headed guy, sort of description. And that got back to the person that I was. She had the front cabin, I had the back cabin, and it got back to her. And I said, DJ, you just can't go back into town shopping. I'll do your shopping for you. And when I called Lanny on it, Lanny jumped right away on it. He called the Attorney General. He called the Department of Corrections. You guys better cease. This better stop now. And Lanny's very thorough on it. And my partner, Joe Reynoso, who's in the book, he's a private investigator. He jumps on it right away, too. They all watch out for my safety.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You've got sounds like a great team, almost like a family there, the way Lanny described it. What, is there a sense of normalcy now, DJ? Will there ever be a sense of normalcy? What's sort of on the horizon? Or?
Well, Joe, the thing is, like I said, I would have never met Lanny unless I would have, I came down to Camarillo and I was looking for an attorney and I was referred to Lanny. And, it took him long. He believed in me, believed in my case, and there are, when I was down there, I was always watching my P's and Q's. I always carried my weapon. I carry a Glock 40, that never leaves my sight, even till now. But sense of normalcy and all that, I don't think I'll ever have normalcy. It's always been on my mind. I have 90% PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because of what happened to me. Like I said, I was one man, actually 2 men, Lanny and me, took on the Department of Corrections. We went up against 30,000 correctional officers, which is the largest prison system in the United States and probably in the world. And the really thing, Joe, is I didn't even have backing by my union. I approached my union chapter president, CCPOA, and I asked him for help. And he looked at me, he goes, "Oh, you're Officer Vodicka. I've been advised not to talk," and he walked away from me. When we were in the Senate hearings, he was told, but the senators drilled him on that. Why didn't you protect him? He pays union dues. He couldn't give a good answer.
Wow. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So you mentioned reforms are going on now in California, thanks to you. You're here now. I'm going to promote the book on my podcast, obviously. I assume you're going to continue to tell your story.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to continue to tell my story. Anybody who wants to reach out on podcasts, I do podcasts for anybody who wants to reach out. And me and Lanny, we come on and talk about it because, Lanny is a powerful man. Him and his wife are both attorneys, and Lanny's an expert in employment law. The Department of Corrections, when they hear Lanny Tron, Joe, they shrivel, man. Lanny doesn't back down from these people. He's one lawyer that does not back. He knows if you're telling the truth, he's going to back you from the beginning to the end. And that's the kind of people we need in the law field, and people that help out correctional officers. But as far as me, there is a documentary being looked at right now about my story, and there is a feature film in development. I look forward to letting let's come out and share to everybody how corrupt it is behind the prison walls. What these rogue prison guards do to the inmates that are doing time, and it's just not in California. It's all over the United States, and there has to be change. There has to be change.
There has to be change. When you were speaking earlier, or maybe it was when Lanny was describing just the type of correctional officer that you were, and one word that I kept hearing come up was the word respect. And loyal listeners to this show know that when I have guests on, it may be a researcher or somebody with a PhD, and we like to talk about the latest and greatest evidence-based practices and the research-driven things that corrections officials should do. But if I can be honest with you, at the end of the day, it all starts with that respect piece. It all starts with that sort of working alliance, as we call it. So whether it's a highly well-designed curriculum that we're teaching correctional officers or probation officers about, like I said, evidence-based practices, really, DJ, at the end of the day, they're all at the core of all of those things are really exemplified by how you handled yourself. And again, it's just respect. And again, that balancing act of, yes, these people did heinous things. They've done dangerous things, but they're human beings, they're individuals. And if you don't give that respect, then it just becomes a warehousing game. And I know California Department of Corrections knows all about warehousing. So, I applaud you for again, doing what we're trying to really do on all sorts of other fronts, just in your own individual way.
And Joe, when I wrote the book after me and Lanny were done with our legal proceedings, it took about 5 years. We fought tooth and nail, and I can remember, Lanny never backed down, and when we first started the case, there was an attorney general on the case that was on the case for a while. And then I get a phone call a couple months later. Lanny goes, "Hey, that attorney general, she stepped down. She didn't want no part of the case." And I think to this day, I think she knew that I was telling the truth, and she didn't want to represent and put her bar, her stuff on the line. So another attorney general stepped in, and I know she knew that I was telling the truth, but she tried to fight it all the way. But Lanny buried her in the court proceedings and all that. And shortly after that, when we were getting ready to settle the case, they tried to put a gag order on me not to write a book or nothing like that. And Lanny goes, "No, you're not going to do that to my client. You want to put a gag order? We'll go to trial in a week. Let's take this to trial." So they ended up saying, "Okay, no, we won't put a gag order on you." So after that, my father, before he passed away, he told me to write the book. So I wrote the book, and the book's a powerful book. There's no book ever been published against the Department of Corrections in California, and it's been out since 2009. I self-published it. I control the rights to it, and never been challenged on the book because Lanny read the book. Everything in that book, there's names, evidence, factual evidence, and I've got all that documentation to support it. And to this day, I never, that's why I think the Department of Corrections fears my name and fears Lanny Tron, because we tell the truth. I mean, that's what it's all about. I lost my career. It's a career that I wanted to stay for 30 years. That was my goal, but it was cut short at 16 years by the warden who ordered me to write the report, not knowing that warden was behind the whole ordeal. He set me up. He threw me under the bus, and he divulged my report to the he was a warden. He was in charge of the Green Wall, and these Green Wall members were part of the Internal Affairs Unit, the ISU unit, who investigates staff and inmates, and they're the ones who are corrupt. Like I said, the book is very, very powerful.
Joe, if I might, DJ, he lost his career. He lost his family, but he never lost that desire to do what was right. And I think in this day and age, we got to focus. We always have to focus on that. And he just wants to continue that message. And fortunately, as DJ said, other people realize that. As he said, there'll be a documentary coming out. He's talking to people about a feature film just about the story, so that what's important is we don't forget, what he did and how he did it, and that all of us have this responsibility. When something isn't right, and you know it and you witness it, don't just clam up and say, I'm just one guy, I can't, or I'm just one person, I can't make a change. That's not true. We can all make a change. When we see something wrong, we have to say something. And you can't worry about the consequences. They're going to happen one way or the other. If you don't say anything, the conduct will continue. If you do say something, hopefully the conduct will change. More than likely the conduct will change, and you will feel better. You will be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I did what was right. I did what was right by me. I did right by my family. I did right by my community. I did right. And so that's what's important. And DJ's lost a lot because he wanted to do that. But he'll know at the end of the day, he did what was right. And I think that's what we all want to do. And I think that's critical to all of us, and the real lesson that comes out of this. The department has instituted training on code of silence, and legislation has been introduced on protecting whistleblowers, and that's all fantastic. But we still need more people out there to make it right, to do what's right. And DJ is just a shining example of that. And that's what has made us, I think, such good friends. You know, him doing the right thing, I'm trying to help him do the right thing. Together, change in the right direction is being made. Not just for us, but for those inmates that they're just human beings. You're right. And DJ's met the worst of the worst. He met Charlie Manson. But I can't even imagine that. And DJ tells the story, and I'm going to let him do that. But Manson, as nutty as he was, he's just a human being. He was just a human being that deserved respect. Not always a lot of respect, but he deserved it. I mean, that was, and I think that's, that's an important lesson to have. DJ, why don't you share with everybody the meeting you had with Manson? Because it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I can't let you go, DJ, without your Charles Manson story.
Wow. Well, that was at Corcoran State Prison. I was a shoe kitchen officer. I was in charge of feeding all the inmates that are locked up in the shoe for their evening meals. And I worked that kitchen for about 3 years. And I had a partner. I won't mention his name, but we were good partners. We hung out together. We did things off prison grounds. And anyways, he was working the unit where Charles Manson was. He's been there for a long while. And I called him on the phone and said, "Hey, I want to come over and meet the famous Charles Manson." He goes, "Okay, man. Hey, Bob, DJ, just after you get done, come on over, and we're done feeding and we're not doing anything." And I said, "Okay, I'll be over in about 5 minutes." So I ended up going over there, and we ended up going up on the second tier where Charles Manson was housed. And there were tiers in there, split walls that split up 3 tiers. And I remember he said, "Hey, DJ, hold on to your keys. Don't make no noise. Let's just hold on to our keys." You know, we had to have these vests on us and all that. And we hold on to our keys, anything that made noise. So we walked up the stairs, and he was about the middle of the tier in a cell. And when you go by these cells, Joe, it's perforated holes like chicken wire, chicken mess, heavy steel, so they can see through and they can breathe through and all that. So as I was walking up, my partner goes, "Hey, he's in that cell right there, Ethan. So why don't you go ahead?" So I went ahead. He stopped behind me. And as I was walking up to the cell, and I turned and faced the cell, Charlie was his back turned towards me, but he was looking out the back window, a little slitted window. He knew I was standing there. He turned around real fast. He ran up to the cell, and he had this like rolled up newspaper when they were on the top bunk. That's how they control their TVs. Instead of getting up, they push it with the button, whatever. So he came back and he goes, "Hey," I thought he was going to spear me. I thought he was going to come through to spear me, but I had a vest on, and he goes, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I just wanted to meet you, Charlie. I wanted to see who you are. You're a famous guy." He goes, "Really?" He's just looking at me, staring at me like probably a foot away through the steel. He goes, "You're a big old corn-fed boy. Where are you from, son? Are you from Nebraska?" I go, "No, Charlie, I'm not from Nebraska, but you're a big old boy. You're a big old boy." And he just kept his beady black eyes with those swatches. And then my partner comes back. He goes, "Hey, Charlie, leave him alone. He's a good guy. Leave him alone. Let him go." And then he goes, "Hey, officer, I won't mention his name. You guys need to get off my tier. You're disturbing me." And he had like a toga on. He had, a little short man, about 5'3", 6'6", 5'3". That makes a difference, But very intimidating if you have never met him before.
And I love how you refer to him as Charlie.
Joe, you know how they transferred Charlie Manson when they had to move out of the institution? I think I put it in my book. When Charlie Manson got moved, he got moved at night, only at night. When he had to go to a medical or being transferred to another area or whatever, they would come in and load him up in a van. Our SWAT team, which is called CERT, would move him. They had 2 vans, and then actually get on the highways or the freeways, and they clear the freeways. They move him just like the President of the United States. They had CHP helicopters up. They moved him. And they cleared the freeways. Nobody was on the freeway within miles when he was getting transported because there was a hit on him. There's always been a hit on him before he passed away. So he was being moved like the President of the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, those and other fascinating stories, DJ, as well as your incredible tale of bravery and inspiration, can be found in your book, The Green Wall, A Prison Guard's Struggle to Expose the Code of Silence in the Largest Prison System in the United States. DJ, I'm going to leave a link to that book in the description of this podcast for my listeners. Like I said, inspirational. Lanny, thanks for joining us as well. You guys are an amazing team. We look forward to any developments. Promise me you'll come back on at the drop of any documentary or film on the story. I'd love to talk to you both again and continue to promote your bravery and character, DJ.
Thank you, Joe, for allowing me to come on and share my story with you guys, and go Vikings.
Go Vikings.
Yeah, sure, Joe. Absolutely. This has been an honor. Thank you for inviting us and letting us be able to share our story with your readers. Again, I can't stress it enough. You do the right thing. Do the right thing. If you see something wrong, say something.
And Joe, just and anybody out there on your podcast that wants a great lawyer and an employment law attorney that knows what he's doing, reach out to Lanny Tron. He's in Camarillo, California, him and his wife. If I had to do this all over again, he's the first person I'd reach out to. He's real quick. He represented an officer up in High Desert, Susanville. You can read that online too, Joe. He represented the widow up there, and that officer went through the same thing that I did, and that officer ended up committing suicide. And like I said, Lanny took on that case, and the Department of Corrections feared him. And, the man knows what he's doing.
It's good to have people like Lanny in our corners. That's for sure. That's for sure. Thank you both again, gentlemen, and I hope to talk to you both soon.
All right.
Yes, Joe. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Be well. Yes, indeed. A well-deserved round of applause for DJ and Lanny both. What an inspirational story. And I talked about it during the interview, but just to revisit this notion of how throughout his career working with incarcerated individuals, DJ consistently brought that theme of respect. And again, as referenced in the interview, loyal listeners are listening to me tout the latest and greatest evidence-based practices, whether they're communication styles such as motivational interviewing or, again, cutting-edge assessments or cognitive behavioral interventions or everything we're learning about the emerging desistance models. But I would contend that at the core of all those practices, without that relationship piece, that engagement piece, all of our other efforts are going to fall flat. And again, that really boils down to what DJ brought to the job, which was respect. Putting aside the acts which brought individuals into the criminal justice system and just looking at them as human beings and respecting them as human beings, which, as you just heard, DJ was able to do with notorious inmates such as Charles Manson and other high-risk gang members. And that investment that he made paid off because the respect he gave was returned by those individuals. And ironically, it wasn't the world's most notorious gang members, arguably, who became the threat to DJ. Sadly, it was the colleagues who were charged with the same responsibilities as DJ was. But as you'll see if you read the book, it shows about going about that in a different way. Again, I'm going to leave a link to the book in the show notes, in the description, that is, of the podcast you're listening to now. I am going to endeavor to track down the YouTube video of that Pelican Bay riot, the Thanksgiving Day riot, which, as DJ noted, sort of sparked the domino effect of everything leading up to the whistleblowing and where he's at on his journey now. Again, thank you both, DJ and Lanny, for joining us and sharing your story. I will be back next week with a fresh episode. In the meantime, you may contact the show or reach out to us through our website, theparagongroup.llc.com, for training or presentations as to evidence-based practices or implementation, or of course, the topic of desistance from crime. If you have questions of me, your host, you can reach out to the show through our email, thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to follow us also through our Facebook and or Instagram page at The Criminologist Podcast. New fun images are being added all the time to those feeds. You don't want to miss out. You can also connect with me, Joseph Arvidsson, on LinkedIn and follow both The Criminologist Podcast and The Paragon Group on our LinkedIn pages. Lastly, if you've not already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel for additional content as to the themes you hear on this show. That, of course, is also called The Criminologist. Merchandise is available. Reach out. And if you believe in what we're doing on the show, please spread the word. Tell a friend or a coworker or a colleague about us. Ask them to subscribe to the show. And of course, do so yourself if you have not already done so. And remember, folks, there's no them. There's only us.
Where you been? Shoot, Pelican Bay. New Folsom B-Wing. I am a cowboy, looking for anything heavy.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, interviews, program design, training opportunities, or to contact the host, please visit us at theparagongroup.llc.com. Click on the Contact Us tab in the upper right-hand side of the page. Be sure to give us a 5-star review, and thanks for listening.
The thoughts, statements, and opinions of the host and cast members do not necessarily reflect the views of their employers and are those of the host and cast themselves. Any discussion regarding client statements, behaviors, actions, or crimes are purely fictional and are used only for the purposes of example. Any examples that could be deemed to be related to an actual individual or individuals are incidental.